Gemma Moore uses her visual fine art practice to defy women's stereotypical positions and roles in society through a humorous perspective. This involves role-playing women's feelings, fears, and anxieties, which are often inflicted through societal norms, values, and expectations of traditional women. Female appearances are threatened through Naomi Wolf's Beautiful Myth, 1990, male idealized expectations of women, and the pressures of social media. Gemma's work defies gender-oriented roles, often illustrated through sets characteristic by domesticity, such as submissive housewives and male dominance. Gemma works across a variety of media to explore and communicate these themes. And without further ado, I'd love to pass you on to Gemma.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming along. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, I thought today I would kind of give you a bit of context into me and my background, and then into my practice. So I have just graduated from the Hereford College of Arts with a first class honours degree in fine art, which I'm really happy with, and it was really great just to have really great feedback when I did my final show, which also took place at the Hereford College of Arts. I also won the Sydney Nolan Residency Award with my final show, and what that is basically a week-long residency at the Sydney Nolan Trust, which is in it's in Prestine, so it's not far from me actually, which is really great. I'm looking forward to taking that up. I haven't taken it up yet. I've been too manic. Right now, I'm doing my master's in fine art at BCU, so that's Birmingham City University, and I am really enjoying it. It's been like really good fun, really interesting. We're only like 5 weeks in, and I've learned like so much already, which is really great. So I think I'll start off by kind of showing you. So as Bethan kind of read out, that was my more contemporary fine art practice. But I think I'm going to start off by showing you kind of some works that I made pre-degree, and then kind of like then showing you the degree work, and just so you can get the contrast, because there is quite a contrast as you will see. So if I share my screen, so you should hopefully all see just like some, please tell me if you can, some like pictures of like landscapes and buildings and a bridge.
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Okay, great. So yeah, as you can see, I kind of began my artistic journey with, just drawing like what was around me. And at the time I was studying my A-levels at Ludlow College in fine art, photography and sociology, separate A-levels. And I would, find myself just constantly drawing the landscapes, because Ludlow is so beautiful. Whether any of you guys have visited Ludlow, I would definitely recommend it because it is such a beautiful place. And where I am, I'm surrounded by castles, ruins. As you can see there's Wigmore Castle. You've got Ludlow Bridge there, another one, Wigmore Castle, and the Buttercross. Just all these lovely kind of buildings and architecture. And I really got into doing this, and I think I completed pretty much 2 of my A-levels looking at buildings and drawing buildings and photographing them. Now, kind of like, if we kind of skip on 3 years, I have ended up, my practice has changed considerably. So if I now go on to my latest website, because I've actually got 2, because my practice was they're so wildly different from each other. I had to end up separating my sites, which took me actually a long time to decide on doing, because one part of me really wanted to have one website with the 2 practices on, but I felt like they were so different, I had to separate them, and for some reason that took me a long time to decide. So if I say here, share my screen again. Okay, now can everyone see like an image of me with a holding a pillow, seeing yours?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so yeah, my practice now this work now chimes with what Bethan was reading, my bio. So yeah, what kind of happened? Back in March 2020, as we all know, COVID kind of took over, and pre-COVID, a lot of my practice was actually based in the workshop. So I would be like, doing processes like welding, which I loved, spot welding, using blow torches to manipulate metal. And then of course, when COVID happened, suddenly I realized that, hang on, I've got no access to any of these workshops. We're stuck at home. I've got to start making use of what I have in front of me. And I realized that actually the only thing that I really did have, except for the various kind of odd materials, was myself. So I had myself. And I thought, well, surely, when you're thinking in terms of, I guess, performance art, it's all about the self and how you can use the self. So I ended up creating what I called the Feminist Persona. And the Feminist Persona was essentially me dressed very differently and using wigs to how I would usually portray myself. But essentially, whenever I, as you can see here in this image, which I titled Yours, whenever I wore this wig, I honestly felt like I could have been anyone, because actually I was kind of abandoning, how I am in my character and adopting a new one. So I work often at night, and I do a lot of my photography at night, just purely because of the aesthetic of having the very harsh like flash, and then you've got the beautiful kind of like dark backdrop. And what I ended up doing was, just as you can see in this picture, just finding sets, or what I just called sets, around my home, or even within the, because obviously with lockdown rules and stuff, within the kind of 5 mile radius of home. And I started to really, really think about how the landscapes, or just my backgrounds around where I am right now, how they could be re-articulated for this project. So here in this this kind of scene, with this image called Yours, the whole idea was, I was trying to tackle ideas of male dominance, and kind of some of the issues some women faced in their lives. And so the feminist persona, for me, it just became a way of like critiquing just some of the problems that I'd heard so many women talk about, and of course myself, some of the issues that I've kind of like stumbled across being like essentially a woman. And so, like I said, whenever I wore this wig, I was able to perform this character that became almost like a surface to just critique all of these issues. And of course, I mean, this picture in particular, Yours, of course, by spray painting onto a pillow, the pillow itself had its own body of meaning. But the whole idea of Yours was just talking about male possession, male dominance, which I think is a problem that we do still have in society today. And you've got the scrap kind of either side of me, and one is an old washing machine, the other is an old fridge, and of course both talk about domesticity and I guess women's role within the home. The fact that they've obviously been like abandoned and they're now scrap, because the fridge was actually just about to be thrown out as lockdown happened, and I thought, no, I want to use that. And as for the washing machine, I just really liked its shape. So I felt that by kind of sitting within those two objects, I'd almost like converted myself into an object. So I'd almost become, they say, don't they, with photography, like the magic number is like 3. So I almost felt as if I'd become like an object, like these two objects next to me, and I'd almost like what's the word, almost like submerged myself in all of this metal. I'd almost become it. I'd almost become an object. And of course it was also a reference to eco-feminist ideas, whereas there are feminists who argue that like sometimes women, or the treatment of women can be like the landscape. So some women can often feel like just push their limits, like the land often is, and then just discarded. Like a lot of land is also discarded and used, and I really felt as if I'd articulated that because I'd put myself within the metal sculptures, if you like. I'm going to find you on my website another. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to find you my final show installation, which I'd like to talk to you about today. So here we go. You can see me kind of sat within. This is my installation at the Hereford College of Arts, and this is where all of my work really came into its own like fruition. So what I did from all of these shoots, so there you can see the Yours image, which is just on the left here. So what I had done was printed just, I mean, like there were hundreds of these images, printed them all out on photographic paper, and gosh, I mean, it was just amazing to curate the space in the way that I wanted it to, and I was able to control, you know, where I wanted them put and how I wanted them hung. And so that was like kind of one side of the practice, one side of what I had to do in the process. But on the floor, you can see kind of where I'm sitting is that it's covered in like snippets of magazine cutouts or magazine papers, and essentially that was all to do with like defiance and almost like defying, I guess, kind of what, you know, I guess the media or forms of the media can really kind of press onto us or press into us, our kind of like psyches. And I mean, it's just amazing how many people are influenced by, you know, what they consume and what they read. And of course, I kind of actively encourage people, you know, to walk inside the installation, because the walking on the walking on the paper was also an act of defiance, if you look at it through almost like a performative lens. The TVs, I mean, I just I love those TVs. I'm just really, really drawn to them. They really are beautiful in my eyes. I like them because, you know, obviously the TVs, they're from like another era, you know, that they're not from, you know, the time that I've been living. And for me, they, because I noticed that the TVs, yeah, they had a historical reference, so obviously, you know, that they referred to a time that's gone by, like the 60s and 70s, because that was the era they were obviously produced. But also, to me, they also reference contemporary society, because I noticed at the time when I was making my final show and putting it together and planning it all and doing all the notes for it and stuff, that actually these TVs were being used a lot in contemporary culture. So, for example, in contemporary music videos, which I found really exciting. I was like, okay, so these TVs are now actually they're almost being trendy. They're almost being brought back into fashion. I really liked that. I thought that was really exciting. So these TVs were almost like they were almost like jewel. They were almost like they had like what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like a double bonus somehow, because they reference something historical and contemporary at the same time. The TVs were actually mapped onto, so what that means is that I had a projector and I was able to manipulate exactly where the projection fell on the TV screens. And another interesting aspect of this work was the fact that actually by doing this process, the TVs were no longer the emitter of information, they actually became the surface of information. So what that meant was that the TVs had almost their purpose of emitting information, delivering information around the world to us, had been taken away. Instead, they were just being used as like a substrate, or like a bit like how we use paint on a canvas. They were just being used in that nature. So that was particularly exciting. The plates, which you can see kind of going up the right hand side of the installation, they all had actually sexist comments that either had been said to me or I'd heard, you know, and I was just like, you know, how can you say that? And I had them written on the plates, and they were basically put on the wall. And I also mapped onto those, and I think it was the I think it was either the third or the fourth, or up to the third or the fourth plate actually flashed, like a very gentle like flash, nothing like too mad, but like the flashing was a reference to, I guess, like today's media again, because my phone at the time when I did the installation, I've got a new phone now, but my old phone used to actually, when it had like a notification, there was like a little button in the corner and it would flash. So instantly, you know, if you'd looked at the phone screen, you'd know you'd have a notification before even like pressing it to activate it. And I found that on some occasions quite intrusive and, you know, quite like almost distracting. And of course, that was another reference to the media. And of course, the plates then borrowed the language of the media or advertising, which was particularly exciting. And I also looked at the same time, I also looked at the denial of function. So you can see on the left hand side, there's actually an old telephone. I spray painted it pink, and you see this telephone. Obviously it's, you know, it's completely, you know, you can't use it now, but it was just the body of the phone. You know, there was no receiver, there was no plugs, no nothing. And the whole idea of that is just almost like the opposite of like what the media tries to do. So it's almost like, you know, being completely disconnected and, you know, remote from the world. Let's scroll down. Let's let's zoom up. I could also talk about my project space event. So my project space event was really amazing, and this actually happened before the degree. This happened actually in April, and whereas the degree show actually happened in June. Now, the project space event was amazing. I spent, essentially it was a residency, so I spent like a week, like in one room. Obviously, you know, I went home and everything, but like I've made that sound as if I spent the, you know, the whole week in the room. No, it was like I just spent basically a good 5 days at college, just as and when I could, in this room, making and displaying my artwork. And I mean, just being able to be in charge, like I said before, being in charge of curating and the display of work was really amazing. You know, just having that control and, I guess, a freedom to do whatever I needed to do in the space that I felt was appropriate. And this was kind of, for me, it was almost like a trial run, because the final show was coming up. You know, it was like in 2 months' time or something, and I thought, right, the project space is going to be a time where I just play. Basically, I just keep playing with materials. And so it was during this time that I really discovered what worked and what didn't. You know, there was things that actually I realized after I did this, I thought, yeah, not going to do that again. And then, you know, it just gave me some time to refine. So I'll give you an example. There's some gloves on the wall, which you can see that have been dipped in pink. And I realized that actually, yeah, I think they look interesting there. But when came around to the final show, I actually left them out because I just thought, yeah, but are they really getting my idea across? Yeah, okay, they reference you know, stereotypical feminine work within the household and that kind of domestic and interior, but I don't know, that's just something putting me off. I think it was like too much of a clash with the kind of harsh yellow and the harsh pink. I just thought, yeah, it could be too much. So that's how I use this process, just to really refine my work, which is something that personally I've actually never found it difficult to try and really hone in on one thing. I mean, for the degree, obviously, it's been an amazing process, just focusing on one idea that really excites me. But when it comes to making, I've always found it a bit difficult to try and think, right, one, you know, the one outcome, if you like. And that's just another kind of view of it. And that was when kind of that was the project space events. That's when people kind of came in, and, you know, I was able to chat to them about the work, which was really amazing, really fascinating. And just to get people's opinions, like, that was just great. You know, people would come in, and I mean, it's just amazing how many people came up with different things to say and what it reminded them of and what they're interested in. But I think that's the beauty of art. I think a lot of it is about, you know, it's when people take note of your work and they're like, oh yeah, and then you have a conversation about it. You know, I think to get people to talk like that is so important, because it helps people to, I don't know, just to share how they feel, which is something that's really important. Now you might be able to see on this TV there's actually like a pink can. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but the can was actually a reference to a project I did in my very, very first year, and it was called the can sculpture. So if I just kind of go back to my old site and give you a bit of context, there should be a whole thing on here called there we go, the can sculpture. So the can sculpture, I mean, I had to reference it somewhere because it was just like one of the most like craziest projects I've ever done. But I essentially, I built this, as you can see here, I built this can sculpture. So I collected, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cans over, it was months, literally, from all these different pubs or people I knew who consumed a lot of canned drinks. I'm not sure how well you can see that. It's not displaying on my. If I try and make this here we go. This might just do it. You might just see it in one view now. Hang on, sorry. No, hang on. Let's make that a tiny bit out a bit more. That might just do it. Bear with me. Bear with me. Come on. There we go, just about to see that now. But this sculpture was it was installed at the Hereford College of Arts. I mean, we're going back now to the beginning of 2019. It was installed for like a few months. And essentially this can sculpture, it was about 12 foot. So it was like huge. I've never actually worked that scale since, no, before or since. And I welded the frame and I collected hundreds of cans. And as you can see, like, you know, I really enjoyed making that work, and I couldn't help just to kind of reference it, if you like, in the kind of final degree show, or the final work, because it was something that I think, as an artist, that making the can sculpture, that was something that I think I wouldn't have ever anticipated myself making, because like I said, when I began the presentation, I kind of showed all of my like Ludlow drawings and paintings. That was what I honestly thought I would be doing. So I think if someone were to kind of say, well, actually, yeah, look, in a year's time you're making this, I wouldn't have believed them. So the degree really has been just an absolutely amazing process, just to kind of, you know, just get your ideas out there and make work. Yeah, let's see what other. Just going to show you some other kind of works that I think were really quite like pertinent, and I guess like shaped my practice like a lot. It's just, hold on, just gonna let it do its thing, because there's a lot of images on this page. I think that's why it's struggling a little bit. Okay, so I think I'll just talk about like one image in particular that I think also shaped the work a lot. And I think I'm gonna talk about, let's find it. Well, I guess actually with a lot of these pictures, I mean, one thing that really did strike me about all of them, or at least, you know, what people kind of said to me when they looked at my work. I'm just going to find like one picture I could talk about. Hold on. So let's take, let's just find one I could talk about. Okay, so let's take this piece here. So you can see we've kind of the box kind of on my head. I think it was like what kind of really made these pictures was like the outlandishness of them, because as you can see, like, you know, they're not like straightforward images. Like there's been a lot of construction. I mean, it took me actually a while to really think about like, well, what do I need to include in these pictures, what do I not? So when it came to this particular body of work, so I call this whole shoot box head, so with the like 50% off, it was actually a reference to, I think, H.G. Wells. He wrote an amazing book. Can't actually give you the title because I've slipped my mind, but he basically talked about he wrote about the future, and he talked about kind of like what he thought the future would be like. And there's a particular part in there when he talks about kind of like adverts replacing kind of people's faces, something along those lines anyway. And of course that visual imagery just completely struck me, and I was like, oh wow, that sounds really exciting. So of course, you know, being interested in the media and, you know, adverts and all that whole visual language, that was how I made this box head. And of course, you know, that's when I made this work pre like final show and stuff. And this is when I first started using the TVs, and, you know, looking at how they could be used and what different screens I could get on them. So here you can see with the pink TV, it was spray painted pink. That was just by turning on the TV that I got that really interesting like mark making lines on the TV screen. And as you can also see in this picture, you know, hopefully that I've tried to reference like the future aspect of feminism. So you can see that's meant to be a calendar where it says 2096, and you can see on the other side there's like a What Happened to Feminism. That is also a book that I've just kind of like modified. And I guess like what I was looking at in these shoots was kind of like how, like, what is the future of feminism? You know, like what does it, you know, yeah, feminism shapes our society today, but like what does it mean in the future? And I did find that particularly exciting at this point, and that's when I started making this work. And yeah, I mean, I guess also if you look at these websites and you look at all these images, especially with this body of work, especially being at home in lockdown, I started to notice that actually I was developing almost like, yeah, okay, I was referencing the media all the time and all that kind of stuff, but I noticed there was a very like inherent sense of like a haphazardness to the images, like there was like like a haphazard DIY aesthetic that started to come through whilst being at home, whilst making his works at home, and I really liked that. Like I started to look at the work and think, I like the fact that actually, okay, yeah, look, they're not shot perfectly, or they could be slightly out. I like that. And that's how I really toyed with that. And then I think that really did come through in my final show, because when I would what's the word, like curate the works or put them up on the wall and things like that, everything was done, like nothing was done at like a deliberate haphazard angle, nothing like that. It was more like the way in which the works were applied to the wall wasn't conventional, so it was almost like subverting what you would find in a traditional gallery space. So I'll give you an example. When I hung the plates up, which you would have seen when I was talking about the final show, I just to kind of have them in there on the wall, I just used 2 nails and then pop the kind of plate on top. And I mean, most people would kind of go to the trouble of perhaps putting perhaps D-rings and then maybe having like a little wire. I thought, no, we're not going to do that, because then of course by not putting loads of effort into the almost like the work, it was also a sense of defiance towards like just the making of the work and making it perfect, which a lot of, as women, I've just noticed time and time again, that's what we're conditioned to do, making things perfect, which isn't, a lot of the time it's not actually realistic. And I never actually just thought of something going back to this whole idea of making things perfect. An interesting story. Now, with the final show again, you can see that at the very, very like back of the work, there's the like TV screens, and you've got all the photographs. You can see that. Now, behind that whole string of photographs, that's fabric, and the fabric actually was one big massive sheet. So it actually came across the wall and then down underneath the paper, and then it kept coming out, so people were enticed to kind of walk in, whether they did or not. A lot of people were actually really cautious. They didn't actually want to go in, which I found interesting. But you see, when I first installed this work, I actually bought an iron like an iron into college, and I started ironing. So I had a plugged it all in, started ironing because it was very creased. And then I suddenly realized that this whole project is about well, I mean, some of the strands of it were about defiance towards women's stereotypical like roles they kind of get pushed into. And then of course, and then I suddenly realized that I was there ironing like this fabric, and I was just like, what am I doing? Because obviously I was presenting this work that was almost like the opposite of what I was doing. But just that whole incident, like what happened, that was really interesting, because it was like I was presenting work and trying to get it to the best way I possibly could. But then I realised, well, actually, the whole idea, the whole conceptualisation of the work is about defying getting everything perfect. So I found that quite interesting. But that's something that's just a really, really like almost like brief overview of my work. I mean, I could go on for like hours, quite literally. But I hope that you found that interesting, and it's given you, I guess, like just like an idea of what I've been doing. I mean, 3 years is a long time to spend, as we know, doing a degree and getting it right. And when your work finally comes to that point with the final show, there's stress and everyone's like, oh my god. But actually, once you get the work out there and you get people's reactions and you feel satisfied, that is literally all what matters. So thank you all for listening. I think we'll do like questions now. I'm just going to check the chat. Oh, shall I answer? I'll answer these questions.
Do you want me to read them out to you, or are you happy to go through them? It's completely up to you.
If you read them out to me, that'd be
amazing. So, first question we've got is, well, obviously, first of all, thank you for your talk. It was really great to see an overview of your practice, especially as it's such a jump from like what you were originally doing till now. I think a lot of artists can kind of relate to that, because I think you start out in one way, and then you kind of go to art school or you meet new people, and it really transforms what your practice is. That's what I've seen for a lot of, obviously not everyone, but for a lot of people that can be the case. And so first question is, who are your biggest artist inspirations?
Oh my gosh, I've got loads. I love like Cindy Sherman. she's just like unbelievable. I love Cindy Sherman. She's like amazing. Her black and white film stills, I mean, they just blow, like, they just blow my mind. I swear. There's one picture of her, can't remember the name of it. I think they are entitled, but I could be wrong. There's a piece she's done, and she's stood kind of like in a road, obviously like in America, and she's got this beautiful road, and it's kind of curving, and then she's got like a mountain like here, and then you can kind of see in the background mountains. After, I don't know, find the image or something. But yeah, Cindy Sherman. Martha Rossler, she was pretty like, like ahead of her game kind of thing. She's cool. Who else? I'm trying to think. I like see, I'm strange because I draw a lot of my visual inspiration from not necessarily like artists, like as in like, artists, but like musical artists. So for example, I really love the visuals for some music videos, hence why, I use the TVs to reference like music videos. So for example, Ariana Grande, like I mean, like her visuals and some of her videos are like amazing, and the lights they use and the setups and the outfits. I love Ariana Grande. I like Doja Cat, like just some of her visuals, like the clothes. I mean, so for example, the video, like the two music videos that, I mean, like really inspired me, were so Doja Cat's Say So, that video, and also Ariana Grande, Seven Rings. Like that was pivotal, like just the lights and everything. So I'm trying to think who else. There's a guy who works a lot with TVs. Oh gosh. I can probably like I can spell his second name. I can't really I don't know, I can't remember his name exactly, but he's amazing too, and he works a lot of TVs, and he's had works in Tate and things. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
So obviously you showed a piece that was kind of reflecting the future of feminism, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you see as the future of feminism, if there is a descriptive way you could describe that?
Yeah. To be honest, I'm not really sure, because I know that like feminism is, as a term, is very divided. So obviously, yeah, it's the belief that there's got to be, or there needs to be, equality between men and women. But of course, like there's so many different feminisms. Um, and I mean, I guess I mean personally, in a utopian sense, it'd just be amazing for feminism, like if just for everyone to be equal, and for everyone to have like mutual respect towards each other. Because I think if people had that, mutual respect to each other, and they, that, half the problems that gender-based issues, or any kind of issue actually, if we had that towards each other, half the issues we have today wouldn't have them. If people all just thought, okay, yeah, look, give this, give person A respect, and what, yeah, we wouldn't have half the issues we have today. But I mean, I just like toying with the idea of the future of feminism, because it was something that at that time I was really grappling with and thinking, but yeah, cool.
So another question here. Such a great photography composition. Are you taking the pictures yourself?
Yes. Yeah. There was only, I think it was like 2 images that actually my dad helped me with. So I had like an idea, and then dad was kind of like, well, yeah, look, I can help you with that, because there's one picture that I didn't show in the presentation, but there's one of me kind of in the middle of the road. And it was like, dad was like, yeah, look, I'm gonna help you with this. And actually it was great, because we used a vehicle to light me in the road, so actually it gave a really beautiful like golden effect. So yeah, a lot of them were taken by me with a tripod on my camera, a Canon camera, and 2 were 2 images I think my dad helped me out with. So yeah. Yeah.
And how do you find that process of taking photos of yourself? Because often it can be quite hard to then perfect things like the composition and the lighting if you're kind of working with yourself. Do you find that, or do you find it quite like a liberating process that you are the focus of your attention and you're taking this photo of yourself?
Yeah. That's the thing. Yeah, I think it's an interesting concept, because 2 things of this is that when I, like I said, when I was in this kind of character, if you like, that wasn't me, because I looked nothing like all the blonde hair and stuff. It was like I could have literally have been anyone. So it felt like when I had photographed myself, like in character, I didn't actually see it as myself. It could have been, it sounds mad, doesn't it? But it was almost like it could have been anyone, because at that point I was representing any woman. That was the point, because with the wig it was almost like it was suggesting that actually, yeah, I could be any woman, which was really interesting. I had another point I was going to add to that. Could you repeat the question again? It might trigger.
Oh, show what I asked myself. No, this is coming from me actually. So when you're like photographing yourself, how do you find that process? Because obviously it can be quite challenging, affecting things like composition, lighting, if you're the focus of yourself, or do you find it quite like a good process, quite liberating that you are taking these images of yourself?
Yeah, I've just thought the second thing I was going to say now, so thanks for doing that. I think it was like, that's the thing, because with these images I kind of realised that I was behaving as both director and model. And that's the thing, like if I was to ask somebody, because that's the thing, I have often reflected on this, I have often thought, like, if I asked somebody else to do it, would I be satisfied, would I be happy with the images overall afterwards? And I concluded that I don't think I would have been, because that's the thing, when it's yourself you can do whatever you want. You can kind of push all your boundaries, you can do whatever you want. Whereas if you were dealing with somebody else, you'd be, is almost like maybe like a bit of a barrier, which I mean some artists, photographers, they can deal with that and they feel comfortable because they're not in the subject. But for me it was almost like, no, I'll use me because it's just easier. But also on top of that was the fact that we were in lockdown. I couldn't see anyone anyway. So I couldn't ask anyone, oh yeah, do you want to do some pictures tonight? No. Couldn't do that. So I just had to kind of get on and do it myself, because if I didn't, my degree probably would have gone down the drain, because I wouldn't have made any work. Yeah.
So I really liked your installation where you placed magazines on the floor. What kind of magazines were those? Was there any specific method of choosing what pages to use?
Yeah, they were basically women's magazines. I mean, this is ranging from fashion magazines, health magazines, basically the whole, whatever kind of magazines I can get my hands onto. But then I also some newspapers as well. So basically, it was essentially media aimed at women. Like there was I know newspapers aren't specifically aimed at women, but there were a few newspapers in the mix. But the majority were like basically magazines aimed at women. And yeah, I mean that's the thing, I guess. That's the thing, because with the magazines, like, I just didn't like how they're kind of constantly trying to sell you something, selling you kind of like, this kind of idealized life. And by, that was kind of my selection process. It was just kind of any magazine that I could kind of get my hands onto. But I mean, the shredding of the magazines, I mean, I think I set myself the target of like one magazine a week, and I started in December 2020. So of course I had like a good 6 months until I had hundreds of magazines kind of shredded, and I did it all by hand, because when I did it by hand I felt like I had more control over the finishing cut, because if you did it with a shredder, you're not having, it's not you kind of having the interaction with the material, something else is doing it for you, a machine's doing it for you. And I didn't like that. I wanted to kind of I guess just have the experience, just the physicality of the material, which was interesting. Yeah, so yeah.
So you also mentioned about the feeling of stepping on those magazines, which I find very interesting. Was the
Yeah.
audience allowed to step on it as well?
Yeah, I encouraged them to. I said, like, if I was there at the time, I would always say, like, go and experience it, because there was also my pictures don't pick it up that well, but I also made a pink light. Well, I say me, it was me and my dad. We kind of put this pink light together. So we use like LED and like pink perspex. We put this light together, and of course, when people stepped on the paper in the light, it was a completely different experience, because the light was so bright. It was actually it was almost like, I mean, like the pink was quite vivid, so it meant that when people looked at the imagery within the installation with the pink light, it meant that actually they were seeing a distorted version of it, which again is a reference to the media. So yeah, I actively encourage people to to walk in, and like I said, like it was just amazing, just the contrast of reactions. You know, some people kind of looked and were like, no, and other people looked and they were like, oh yeah, and they were happy, they wanted to try it out. So that was just interesting. And of course that I can never say the word, you know, where people take part in something, part, like, you know, where people like kind of taking part in the work. That was also interesting because it meant that, yeah, you just got people's reactions. And like I said before, with art, it is all about just like that experience and people interacting and, you know, yeah, just sharing human experiences. Yeah.
So why the colour pink? I obviously know like it's related to like women and
Yeah.
you know, traditional female things, if you could say. But did you ever
Yeah.
think about using a different colour that was kind of going against this idea, as you're like so strongly into feminism? Do you ever think about using a colour that wasn't so closely related to the idea of like womanhood?
Um, to be honest, I think because I because I like the colour pink, I was automatically biased. I wanted to make pink light. And I think it was something that was inspired by, you know, like I said, the visual imagery in these music videos, just because I liked it. Like I think if I look back and I think, say if I made like a yellow light or like maybe like a blue light, because that's obviously talking about like stereotypically like male, you know, the male gender. I don't know, I just feel like that wouldn't have worked properly, because with pink it is really tapping into, you know, like pinks for girls and those kind of stereotypes. And of course, because the pink, like it wasn't just like a normal color pink, it was like a hot kind of neon pink, so it was really tapping into like, you know, almost like over feminization, hyper feminization. Yeah.
Andrea, you don't need to apologise for asking questions. The more questions, the merrier here. I find your work quite humorous. Example, the picture with the cows in the background. How do you see humour in art? Is it necessary for conveying your message to a broader audience?
Yeah, I didn't talk much about the humor. Yeah, humor was like it became quite quite like a pivotal point in the work, because I noticed that when I was kind of like, it's obviously feminism and it's like yeah, it is like a serious subject, but I found that when I used like humor, people were more drawn to it, and they kind of thought like, you know, what's she doing now? But then actually by having that interest, they were giving the subject attention. Um, so yeah, and I mean it is meant to be deliberately like humorous. So for example, yeah, as you mentioned with the cows, you know, like when I was in lockdown, I was trying to find places that I could have used as my backgrounds. So with the cows, that was my uncle's farm, who doesn't live far away, and it was like, well, yeah, like, you know, cows, that, you know, that if you put yourself in that context, that almost like you're pushing the outlandishness of the image even further. And that's the thing, like I think humor in art, you know, I think it's powerful, it really is powerful, because if you've made someone like, I mean, not only just look but like laugh or like, you know, giggle at your work, it means that you've, you know, you've automatically engaged them, you've made them kind of interact and think, oh, I found that funny, but why? You know, let's investigate that further. um and yeah, is it necessary? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because like I said, like humor is something that like we've all got a sense of, well, I mean, some people might not have a sense of humor, but like most people do. And I think, you know, like everybody has an opinion about humor and what makes them laugh and what actually doesn't make them laugh. So yeah, but what's interesting about humor is that, you know, when I, in the making process, these pictures were funny, so literally like getting to a cow shed and like setting up the camera and falling over and all that kind of stuff, that was funny. But it was like when I actually displayed these pictures in the book which I showed you, the project space, and the final show, the images actually became almost like quite serious. Like they actually became suddenly in like a completely other context and on my computer, or on my camera, and they were printed and displayed and put on the white wall. Suddenly they became, actually, they lost their sense of humor. They actually became really quite like serious and almost, what's the term, almost like yeah, I think the only word that's coming to me right now is serious. They were like actually they almost became quite, no, that's it, I remember, brutal and quite forensic, because it was almost like people were able to then really unpick the image and think, well, actually, yeah, why are you doing this, that, and the other in that given context? But yeah, humor's if you get it right in art, I think it is really powerful. If you start playing with those ideas, it's yeah, it's definitely something to engage with, I think, if you, yeah.
And so obviously you've just started your masters at the Birmingham School of Art. You said that you've really enjoyed the experience so far.
Yeah.
How have you found that that's changed your practice anyway? I know you had such a big jump from like the drawing like buildings and kind of the area you live, and then the can sculpture to the feminist work. Have you seen any like changes in your work since moving from your previous BA to now the master's course?
Yeah, definitely. I'm less inclined to use like the self, if you like. I'm trying to move away from that, but I am finding it quite difficult because I somehow get in my pictures, you know. And then and I've started to use the workshops a lot more, which I'm really enjoying. The workshops at the art school are just incredible. Like they're like amazing, so many different new processes to get my teeth into. But saying that though, like there are traces in the work that I am making now that do heavily reference like the work that I've made previously. So, for example, when during the end of the degree, I ended up making work that was also a response to the growing concerns of like I guess violence upon women. So like say street harassment, street assault, all that kind of stuff. So the issues that happen against women in the context of a street, that was starting to really interest me, because it's a problem that really bothers me, and it needs to get like sorted. It needs to get, yeah, it just needs to get sorted. And I kind of over the summer I really felt like, well, at the end of the day, now the kind of feminist persona work is almost like concluded, and I felt like it was complete in my mind and physically. At the final show, I felt like, right, for the MA, I need to talk about a problem that is happening right now and it's affecting women, because I felt like with the feminist persona, it was talking about a problem that is almost not like I don't know, like I guess it was talking about like a very specific problem, so domesticity and subservience. But I felt like, no, I need to pull this project or these interests into contemporary day society, like feminist issues. So for example, violence against women. And so at the moment I've actually been making large protest banners, and they're huge, they're massive protest banners, and taking them out into the streets of Birmingham, which has been, yeah, amazing, because you've got the context of Birmingham, and I love Birmingham. So yeah.
No, Birmingham is great, and the School of Art is wonderful. It's where the Round Lemon team met, so it's holds a special place in the Round Lemon team's hearts.
Yeah.
So obviously, this is a bit of a hard question to ask, because you've only like very recently graduated from your BA, and a lot of this time I've asked this question been to like more, I guess, practitioners who've been practicing for like 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give to like a creative who's just starting out? Maybe they're just going into art school, maybe they're just like trying to find their feet in the world of art. Do you have any advice you could give to them?
I would definitely say, like, oh my gosh, like if you ever get an idea, but I mean, like, whenever you get ideas, just write them down. Don't let them slip out of your head and just go into like kind of like where all the ideas hang out. Don't do that. Have your ideas physically, like in a book or like a notebook, because you can think of something, say like I don't know, even like a whole year like before you actually bring it into fruition. And like if you just keep like a log or even like a diary just of like what I guess like experiences you have that either like either make you really happy or really bother you, and if you just have that kind of like in like a book and something you can keep referring to, but I think that's what you have to do, because like with me, like I've had ideas like over, I think it's like the summer of 2020 when we were all obviously still with COVID and things. I remember I just kept this book of just like full of ideas, and right now they haven't pushed anything yet, but I know that in the future, if I'm ever kind of lost for ideas, I can always refer back to that, So yeah, don't ever waste ideas, don't ever try and keep up with them. What else would I say? I just say, like, follow your instincts. Like, if there's a problem, like, in society, or even like something, like, it doesn't always have to be a problem, it can be a good thing, like a good thing or a bad thing in society that's bothering you, like, and I mean, like, it's bothering you and you think, like, this is going to get sorted. I think that that's what you need to respond to, because that's like your instinct. It's like, yeah, you have to try and make work about that, and don't worry too much about I guess, like, what you're going to make at the end. Don't worry about that. Just enjoy, like, the process of getting there, and then whatever the outcome is whatever it is, because that's the beauty of conceptual art, isn't it? Or contemporary art, because at the end of the day, it's all about, like, actually that process you follow, or the conceptualization of the work. It isn't necessarily the physical outcome, which of course, we see that a lot in contemporary art, which makes it really exciting. And one thing I would also say is make sure, if you can, visit loads of galleries. So try and, like, contextualize your work and try and find out what's going on, like, right now, like in contemporary art. And then once you've seen what you want to see, then that's going to hopefully springboard ideas. And just talk to people as well. Just keep sharing ideas and networking and things like that. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Do we have any last questions before we wrap this up? No? Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. I believe you have a website. What is your website handle?
Yeah, so let's have a look. Should I pop them into the, like...
Yeah, go into the chat, yeah?
Yeah, let's have a look. So if I do that... okay, that's the Feminist Persona one. Okay, hang on, if I copy... and that's like so that the kind of like the traditional website, but that's on the that's just on the Can Sculpture page, but you can go out of that and browse the whole kind of site if you like.
Great, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been so great to hear about your practice, and obviously we look forward to seeing what else you create. Obviously now you're around Birmingham, have to come and see what else you're making. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us this evening. It's been so great to have you here. We're back next week with our final artist talk of the series, which is Acacia Diana. Tickets are available through our Rowland website.
Cool.
Hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, honestly.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.